Welcome and good evening. Thank you for joining us for our town hall. My name is Eric Omar and I'm the Executive Director of Immigrant Legal Center. I'd like to thank Nebraska Appleseed, Heartland Workers Center, ACLU Nebraska, Senator Tony Vargas, and Fatima Flores for joining us. I would also like to thank everyone who is joining us online. Before we begin, while this is a town hall in DACA, we wanted to note that ILC is monitoring the President's recent executive order restricting legal immigration, in particular H-1B and H-2B visas. Please check on our website and Facebook page for updates. More than 3,000 DACA recipients call Nebraska home. You are valued, important members of our community. DACA recipients came to our country as children and are American in every sense of the word. Today, many DACA recipients have started families of their own and are growing their careers. Your home is here. The Supreme Court decision last week was exciting and provided a short-term cause for celebration. However, there is still a lot of work to be done to provide a permanent pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients. The next step is to pass a permanent legislative fix at the congressional level. During this town hall, in collaboration with our community partners, we will share with you what this decision means right now, what we anticipate could happen, how you can advocate for a permanent solution, and ways to get involved to ensure proper representation, including participation in the census. We will also hear from State Senator Tony Vargas and DACA recipient and activist Fatima Flores. If you have questions, please submit them in the comments below. We will attempt to answer them during the town hall, but if we are unable to, we will provide answers following the event. Now I would like to introduce Alexis Steele, Policy Attorney for Immigrant Legal Center, to discuss the decision and what we anticipate could happen next. Alexis?
Thank you, Eric. Hi there, my name is Alexis, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. I can't really tell if I'm streaming right now, though. Maybe I can get some confirmation, but all right, great. So thank you for your time here today. So we're here because the Supreme Court last week has ruled that the Trump administration's termination of the DACA program was unlawful and reinstated the program in full. The court found the termination unlawful on two different grounds, meaning the Supreme Court could have found the decision to terminate the program unlawful for either of these reasons. First, the administration failed to consider that the DACA program is complex and that it provides protection from deportation in addition to granting immigration benefits, such as work authorization and more. This means that the program did not necessarily need to be terminated in order for the administration to address the issues that it took with the program and concerns that it had about legality. Second, the administration failed to take into consideration that the DACA program has created reliance. And by failing to consider that reliance and weigh those reliance interests when deciding whether or not to terminate the program, it failed and it made an unlawful decision. So this unexpected victory, which unfortunately is unexpected and says a lot about how critical it is to act now and to secure DACA, or rather to secure a pathway to citizenship that is clean for DACA recipients, has several immediate consequences. First, the government must now accept all applications for DACA. This means initial applications in addition to the renewal applications that the government had to accept in compliance with court injunctions. So we are not yet certain how and what exact steps the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, the agency of the government that accepts those applications, we're not exactly sure what that agency will do to comply with the requirement that it accept those applications, but we're about to see in the upcoming weeks. And the fact remains that the government must now accept those applications. Second, and when we do learn more, we will be updating you. So please check back. We will get out that information. So as you are likely aware, eligibility for the DACA program rests on factors such as age, presence in the United States, education level, and other factors. So if you are a current DACA recipient or a prospective DACA recipient, we strongly advise that you consult with legal counsel to discuss the decision and the impact that could have on your situation. Next, we're looking at other consequences of this decision. The next big consequence is that the Trump administration may still try to terminate the program because the Supreme Court ruled that the way the DACA program had been terminated was unlawful, but it conceded that the Trump administration had the power to do so if it decided to do so lawfully, which means to take the steps that our laws require for the government to do something, to make a major decision about a program, an agency decision. So there are two main different ways that the administration could terminate the program. One would be to fulfill, like I said, the procedural requirements in terminating a program, which would include notice and comment and things like that. Another way would be for the administration to not oppose lawsuits brought against the government by parties who are seeking to terminate the program. This might seem strange, but this happens. And
Looks like we might have lost Alexis there. Rose, it looks like you're up next on the agenda, so I don't know if you just want to jump in, and if Alexis comes back, we can let her pick up where she left off.
Can do. Yeah, that works. I'll let Alex, because what she was covering was super important. So we'll definitely touch base with her once she's back. Hello, everyone. My name is Rose Gallinas. I'm Legal and Policy Counsel, and I'm about to hand it back to Alexis, who's going to.
Thank you, everyone, for bearing with that technical difficulty. So to continue, the other way that the Trump administration might terminate the program would be to unoppose, to let lawsuits go that challenge the government and request that the government end the program. That might seem like a weird goal for parties to have, but it's something that exists. On May 1st of 2018, Nebraska, the state of Nebraska, joined the state of Texas, along with 5 other states, in a lawsuit that requested that the government terminate the program. This case has been developing, and now the judge in that case has requested that parties submit briefs, information on how the recent DACA decision at the Supreme Court impacts their case. Because like I said, the Supreme Court case that was decided last week did not speak to questions of the program and its lawfulness in itself. So that case in Texas, to which Nebraska is party, is at play. So there is a possibility that in this case, the judge might rule that the government must terminate the program. And if the government chooses not to participate in our adversarial system of justice and does not defend itself and decides to comply with that request and not to appeal the decision, that would be another means to terminate the program. This is incredibly problematic. So today, our celebration is significant, but it cannot be complacent. The Supreme Court's decision is a major victory for DACA recipients. It's real. It makes a difference whether or not someone has stability at this moment today and tomorrow and has work authorization and things like that. But as critical as that security is for tomorrow, future tomorrows, we are those that we need to fight for. So we are honored to count our dreamers among us, not just our community here, but our country as a whole, because we are stronger and we are honored to claim them as members of our communities. But we need to secure their stability and their safety and happiness. So, as my colleagues will explain, there are important ways that you can help. One is to call your senators and to your federal senators and to encourage them to support the Dream and Promise Act which is a clean option and pathway to citizenship that is currently in the Senate, and to hold our elected officials accountable at all levels. So check back in with us in the upcoming weeks for information on the state of Nebraska's effort to end the program and how to fight back in defense of DACA. For now, I welcome our next speaker, Rose Godinez of the ACLU, and encourage you to complete the census if you have not already. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Hello again. I am Rose Godinez. I'm Legal and Policy Counsel with the ACLU of Nebraska. And there should be some slides popping up here in a bit. But in the meantime, I want to give a huge thank you to Immigrant Legal Center for coordinating this event and inviting us to participate. And second, I want to tell all DACA recipients and dreamers that we are with you every step of the way until you have a pathway to citizenship. And while I know that us from immigrant families never really truly rest easy during this time, one thing that we can do to feel more empowered and to empower those that we love and care for is by knowing our rights. So that's what I'm going to cover in this presentation today. First off, for those of you who don't know who the ACLU is the American Civil Liberties Union, and it's a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works to protect the constitutional rights of everyone in the United States, regardless of immigration status. We have an affiliate in every single state, so if your civil rights or civil liberties have been violated anywhere in the country, including Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, we encourage you to reach out to the ACLU. We do our work via 3 different strategies or facets, including education, so doing these types of presentations, advocacy, so working for senators and conducting research in that way. And then lastly, usually as a last resort, but one of my favorites, litigation. All right, so now turning to why knowing your rights is so important. These statistics are from 2018, and the Nebraska Crime Commission report is available for anyone to review. So I want to highlight why it's so important to know your rights, and that's best demonstrated with this data. Traffic stops are largely the reason why people of color and immigrants come into contact with law enforcement. And unfortunately, we are overrepresented. On the chart, you can see that Black people are overrepresented in the amount of traffic stops. Black, Latinos, and Native Americans are 2 to 3 times more likely to be searched than a white individual and 2 to 7 times more likely to be arrested. And I know I'm likely preaching to the choir. We all know that brown and Black people are more likely to be racially profiled, but that's exactly why we need to know our rights so we can prevent those searches and prevent those arrests. Potentially, it's not a guarantee, of course. Now, the very first and very important first right that you must know is that you have the right to remain silent. And those protections and those rights are afforded to everyone by the US Constitution. The only thing is, in Nebraska, if you are asked about your identity or identify yourself, then you do have to provide your name. Other than that, you have nothing else to provide, and you can invoke your right to remain silent. One thing I included on there was a link to print out your own red card. The ACLU has those available in English, Arabic, and Spanish. If you want to print those out, it's an easy way to exercise your rights and just a reminder to carry in your wallet or your purse when you are just around and stopped by the police. So I have limited amount of time, so I'm not going to cover your rights at home in detail, but I do want to ensure that people know that police can only enter your home if you have a judicial warrant, if the police has a judicial warrant or with the permission of a resident. Other than that, they're not able to come inside. And now going on, I'll go into more depth into your rights if stopped on the street or while protesting. If the police approaches you with questions, the first question that you must ask is, am I free to leave? If they say yes, then walk away calmly. If they say no, then at that point, that's when your rights are triggered. That's when you have the right to an attorney and when you invoke your right to remain silent. Make sure to do so orally, or in other words, you can also use the red card that I mentioned before. During this stop, the police officer may pat you down to make sure you have no weapons or drugs in your possession. Do not resist this inspection, as uncomfortable and as invasive as it can feel. do not resist, because it could just amount to another charge of obstructing a peace officer or assaulting a peace officer, which we don't want. They can also feel into your pockets in case they feel that there's a weapon or drugs inside the pockets. So when you are being stopped by a police officer on the street or while protesting, make sure your hands are straight up and you are shaking your head if they are searching you, so you can clearly show that you're not consenting to the search. And in addition, say out loud that you do not consent to this search. The officers cannot arrest you without a warrant or proof that you have committed a crime or that you have no legal status. So do not provide any false documentation. Do not provide any documentation from your home country, because that just gives them the proof they need to show that you are not in this country legally. Don't give police false documentation. Never lie to the police officer. If you even feel like lying to the police officer, just invoke your right to remain silent. All right, and then your right to protest. A lot of DACA recipients are participating in the Black Lives Matter events, which is great. And I want you to know that you also have a First Amendment right, regardless of your DACA status, to participate in those protests. You don't need a permit to march in the streets or sidewalks, as long as marchers don't obstruct cars or pedestrian traffic. And I will touch a little bit more on your right to protest a little bit further on. Now, your rights in the car. If you are a passenger, you have the exact same rights that I just mentioned before. If you are the driver, the police can ask you to provide license, registration, and insurance. Those are non-negotiable. You have to provide them if you're asked for them. If you're stopped by the police and you just lower your window down a bit and ask why you're being stopped for without providing your documentation, that's not how it's going to work. You have to give them the documentation, and then they will tell you what you are being charged for. Both drivers and passengers have the right to remain silent. And a couple tips I want to give for people that are driving is when you see that a police officer is about to pull you over, put your hands on the wheel. Do not try to anticipate and try to get your driver's license, registration, insurance. I know sometimes we try to get ahead of ourselves and get prepared, but don't do that. As people of color, we know the consequences of reaching for the glove box and reaching behind us. So put your hands on the wheel. The passenger puts their hands on the dashboard until the police officer approaches the car. If an officer asks to look inside your car, say, sorry, officer, I don't consent to searches, or just, I don't consent to searches. Use the word consent and state it very clearly. And also this can be mentioned in any language. The police officer has the requirement to find an interpreter so they can communicate with you. You can also just shake your head, but again, I encourage you to use your words or use the red card that we have circulated. And then additionally, I want to give you 3 reasons why you shouldn't consent to a search. Number 1, you're not sure who has been in your car. Have you let someone borrow your car? Have you been an Uber or lifting people around? You just never know 100% what is inside of your car. Secondly, the officers, if you consent to a search, can tear your car apart. They can take off the side panels, they can take off the dashboard. And it's not like afterwards you can be like, oh, can you put it back together for me? They won't. So that's all on you, and that's an additional cost. And lastly, it's your constitutional right. It's in the Bill of Rights. They can't do a search without your permission. And the only other way that they could do a search, which is highly unlikely, is finding a warrant. They would have to go track down a judge, which is really inconvenient. You'd have to wait in the car, they'd have to wait. And then the only other reason they could do it is if they have probable cause to search the car. And that would happen if they saw like a container of liquor, or they saw a sawed-off shotgun, or of course, if they heard someone in the trunk, then obviously they could search the car. But otherwise, they would likely try to psychologically pressure you to let them search the car by stating things like, well, if you have nothing to hide, then why don't you let us search the car? Again, I gave you those 3 reasons why you should not accept a search for a car. Now, moving on to your rights if stopped at the airport, I will only cover the last bit. So non-citizens do not have a right to counsel at the airport when you're coming back, or anywhere in the airport. And you have to answer any questions regarding your travel, regarding your immigration status. Of course, one thing I would suggest at the airport, if you are being questioned about things that are not related to your immigration status or your travel, then I would suggest you say, well, can we do this secondary questioning at another time? If they say yes, then that's great. But the officers have wide discretion at the airport. And then if they don't, then, and you are afraid to go back to your home country, then state so to the officer and request asylum. Now, lastly, your right to record the police. You have the right to photograph anything in plain view, including federal buildings and police activity. Police officers cannot confiscate or demand your photographs or video without a warrant, nor can they delete it under any circumstances. Police officers may order you to stop filming so you don't interfere with their investigation and to ensure you're at a safe distance, but they shouldn't tell you to stop filming. Sometimes that has happened in Nebraska. And if that does happen, that's really a call for you to make. On one side, the recording may help us hold the police accountable, as has happened with George Floyd and a variety of cases that have surfaced. But on the other hand, you can get charged with obstructing a police officer's investigation. Of course, you will have the defense of the First Amendment, but there are also other consequences for immigrants that aren't maybe present for citizens. Lastly, I just want to say you can download the Mobile Justice Nebraska app available for Android and iPhone to record video that automatically uploads to the ACLU. You have my contact information at the end if there's any questions. And then now it's my honor to introduce Sergio Sosa, Executive Director of the Heartland Worker Center. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sergio Sosa. I am the Executive Director of the Heartland Worker Center. And I'm so happy to be here. And I heard, that city, also, is helping, with something, if the police stop you. But anyway, I think, that for our communities, the Supreme Court news, it was, well taken. We were happy. We are happy. But as you all know by now, it is a temporary decision that it can be changed. And the question is, how much longer DACA recipients, is going to be through this, to celebrate, every 6 months, every year, every 2 years, and not having have a permanent decision. It's kind of, when you get married. You get married, and every year you celebrate, your wedding, marriage, and you get, through the years, and then you keep celebrating, because, it's permanent. And I think that's the real solution that public officials, especially in the federal level, they need to take. So the call to action, I will put it, in two ways. Let us do, the conventional call to action. Call your senators, text them, meet with them, write them, and tell them that beside, 700,000 DACA recipients, across the state, or 3,200 DACA recipients, across Nebraska, there are 76% of non-DACA recipients who support DACA recipients. So what they don't get to make this a permanent decision? Second of all, I will say, that let us do or target the Homeland Security offices. There is a letter that the Dreamers in the national level, they are putting out to call for accept new DACA recipient renewal. And they must, accept that and renew new DACA recipients. But also in the, I would say that to our public officials, even though in the federal level, it is a political year. We understand that. But the lives of DACA they are not political decisions. It's not a political matter. It's their lives and the lives of their families. And you got elected to represent all of us. I am a citizen of the United States and with so many people, who support DACA recipients. And we send you to Washington to do your job, not to play politics. And enough is enough, Nebraska representatives. You make a decision to support DACA recipients and allow them to have a permanent solution, meaning that you gotta do 4 things. One, make it, a permanent solution by, building a path to citizenship. Second of all, you should keep families united. So the deporting, their parents, is not a solution. Which goes, to my third point. Stop, you need to help, to stop deportations. And once, you pass, this piecemeal effort, you need to take a look to think about immigration reform. And also, I will say, to the audience and the people who are in this Zoom meeting, that numbers are power. If we organize them, if we get them together. And this election year, I will encourage you all to use the network of relationships that you have to get people to vote and elect people, representatives who listen to their constituencies, who will work for their constituencies, not the other way around. People who will meet with their constituencies, and not a way that we have to beg, some of them, to meet with us. They work for us. You work for us. And I'm happy, I'm glad, that Senator Vargas, have been, a champion of not only this issue, but so many other issues, because he's someone who proved himself that, what an elected position should be all about. And I want to finish, with encourage people to fill it up, the census. Census is so important, not just because the economical situation, not just because building up, infrastructure for Nebraska, but, the redistribution as well is going to be so important that everybody should be counted. As June 2020, 67.8% of Nebraskans, have been done the census. But there are counties in rural area who they are low. And even in Dallas County, West Omaha is really high. But I will encourage my brothers and sisters from North Omaha and South Omaha to take it seriously, to be counted. And it's not going to take, that much time, 9 to 10 minutes, the most. And it is important, not just for Nebraskans, but it is important for your family, your community, but especially for yourself. Thank you.
Cesar, I think you are up next.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, everyone. Well, I was going to say hi, everyone. Thanks for attending this this event, this virtual town hall. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the take action portion and just echoing a little bit of what is being said too. So we're definitely very excited to celebrate the Supreme Court decision with everyone here today. And at the same time, we know our work is not done and we need to move forward into what we are looking to happen into the future. The stress and uncertainty DACA recipients face waiting for this decision shows the importance of permanent legislation. So we all, as documented Nebraskans, as friends, family members, coworkers, and neighbors of documented Nebraskans, we had to go through a stressful process of waiting for this decision. So it definitely takes an emotional toll on our communities. So for now, the Supreme Court kept our families and communities whole for now, but we need a long-term legislation. So the question is, what do we need? And we cannot emphasize enough that we need legislation that helps DACA members of our communities without hurting others. And that legislation is the Dream and Promise Act. If you remember, the House of Representatives passed the Dream and Promise Act a year ago in June 2019. So it's been a year since then. And the Senate has failed to vote on the bill. So we need the US Senate to take action. And just to remember to remind you that the original Dream Act was introduced in 2001. So almost 20 years ago. So definitely it's time for the Senate to take action. And so what can we do? Well, I encourage everyone to take a moment tonight, tomorrow, soon, to call Nebraska Senators Sass and Fisher. You can find phone numbers and a simple action alert on our Nebraska Appleseed Take Action page at neappleseed.org/take-action. And just so you know, your calls make a big difference. We've seen other times where like just a handful of calls make some of our representatives understand what their constituents are hearing and what they feeling about an issue. So please, like, your calls make a big difference. So grab the phone and make those calls and let them know what you think about this issue, and show them what Nebraskans want to see. Just a quick reflection on DACA. DACA was not given to us. It was secured through many years of organizing, conversations, and efforts of many DACA recipients and leaders and community allies. So now we all together is the time to take the next steps. So I will say, just I cannot stress this enough. Dream and Promise Act is positive, long-term legislation that helps dreamer Nebraskans to have a path to citizenship. So please go to neappleseed.org/take-action, find simple language, and contact your senator, Sass and Fishers, to let them know what you think. So if you feel that you want another action and you feel extra generous with that, you can also tell the Department of Homeland Security to begin accepting new DACA applications quickly. And you can find a petition letter at United We Dream to demand the Department of Homeland Security to accept new DACA applications. So if you feel like doing that, you can go to unitedwedream.org or DACAdecision.com and find the sample letter to do that. Have the pleasure to introduce Senator Tony Vargas, and thanks for attending this town hall.
Thank you so much, Cesar. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I was looking at Sergio and Rose. Okay, so there's something really powerful in what we're doing here, and actually something that you said, Cesar, that DACA was not given to us really resonates with me because it was never given to us. I'm thrilled that the Supreme Court decision to uphold fairness and justice came through. I'm thrilled on behalf of the 640,000 plus individuals and growing, the 3,000 young Nebraskans in all across our state that are, doing amazing things for their communities. They're continuing their education, they're working, they're fueling our economy. I know we've heard that, but somewhere right now, they were breathing a sigh of relief, and it's just the first step. And there's more that needs to happen. I don't need to tell you about the economic impact, but I think it's always bears witness to why this is so important. You know, our DACA recipients have been contributors to our communities. They are leaders, they are students, they are workers, many of which are working on the front lines throughout COVID-19. And and that's not where it ends. They're also economic drivers of success. They've contributed millions upon millions of dollars to our GDP. They are spending in our communities. They are working and helping to supporting our small businesses. And so not recognizing the people and the stories, and you'll hear that from Fatima in a little bit, not recognizing that is a misstep, because what I believe in my heart is that this momentary step and victory is secured because of what Cesar said. It was secured because DACA was not given to us. DACA was brought on by the voices of people. You know, what Sergio said is there's this persistent belief in the American dream. I gotten to become a state senator, not because I love politics, but because I have a family, I have amazing parents that instilled in me that when they came to this country, step one was becoming a citizen. Step two was trying to figure out how to help other people. And then they lived the American dream. They worked on factory lines. They helped support their communities, their own family members, and they did everything they can to be the embodiment of a citizen. But this win for the American dream is a persistent belief that we're exceptional because we're citizens. No, we're exceptional because we are governed by our people. This union that makes us who we are is made up of people, and those people come together and remind us that self-governance and the government that we have is durable and lasts only when we step up and we say that we want something different. What has been earned in every step of the way, the DACA program to then exist, even to the Supreme Court decision, is as a result of people and activism and individuals sharing the solidarity of what's really happening and the passion and the pain that comes with this. Liberty is not always so easy, especially for those that are usually silenced. And so this win that what we're seeing is just a step. But it's an important step that I think is grounded in what the American dream is. Because whenever I hear the phrase, the American dream, I think of the collective act of hope and idealism. I think about this idea that when we feel like something is not meeting the needs of our people, that together, individuals and the collective come together and try to reimagine how things can better meet the needs of our people. And that sometimes means recognizing that our country has some severe shortcomings. That means recognizing sometimes that our country is not meeting the needs, those by race, by socioeconomic status, and in this instance, by people's actual immigration status. But those shortcomings led to something really beautiful, because when we love our country, we don't just coddle it and say everything's going right. We love our country, we recognize it's and criticize and find ways to make it better. That's why this country is great. That's why all the DACA individuals jump through hoops to try to demonstrate just how amazing they are. And so I'm just so impassioned by this, because I sometimes I feel overly fortunate. I didn't have to go through all those hoops that those individuals did. I was born in this country, but that doesn't mean that me and all the other people on this call are not fighting like crazy to make sure that this dream, the status that people have right now, is not the solution to the problem. Self-government, this belief that we can do more, only happens when we push forward and we ask for something different. And I know that because I'm the elected official that people usually call when something isn't working right. Sergio's right. Actually, everybody on this call is right. The only way things change is by actually voicing your concerns. We often believe that other people are doing the asking. Somebody else is going to do it for us. And I guarantee you that our Congress people and our federal delegation, our US senators, they will begin to listen a lot more if we have thousands, tens of thousands of Nebraskans calling them and telling them, even though I may or may not know somebody directly that is DACA, I believe it's important that we support these individuals because I've heard these stories. I've listened to this live cast, and I know that there's something that we need to do, because if it was working, then we wouldn't have had to put this in place in the first place. Because people shouldn't be living in this period of transition where they still have to breathe and think maybe next year might be different for me. And so activism is truly, I think, part of what we need to do. So my call to action to you is we need to look together and hold ourselves and all elected officials accountable, because the voices of the masses are only heard when those voices are actually pushing forward and making sure that they're the loudest in the room. And elected officials, we only exist because, and we only exist for you. That's the only reason we are existing in this. I get elected by people, and I stay elected when I do my job. And I believe that. And I know my federal delegation believes that same thing. However, when all the voices of the people are not all in unison on something, or we're not educating our electorate and the people, it's easy for them to then ignore or not listen to the cries and the real needs of our community. And so my call to action is what you just heard. We need to do something that provides a solution. The Dream and the Promise Act is real. It's in the US Senate, and you've been hearing this term called clean. I think clean to me means that this solution provides a solution to the problem. Rather than trying to negotiate or find a compromise on something, why don't we try to solve the issue that's at hand? That we have hundreds of thousands of individuals that want to stay in this country, that have been jumping through hoops to try to demonstrate that they are amazing Americans, because they are. And let's figure out a solution to bring that to task right now. That's my ask to you. And so as a follow-up, you're going to see some ways to connect with your federal delegation and follow through on what Cesar said and what every single one of us said. Because the only way that our American democracy remains exceptional is when the voices of those that are listening right now and those that are not on this call make sure their voices are heard. And I want that next voice to be Fatima, because I'm an elected official. I could say all this, as much as I possibly can, and I continue will. But what's really important is that you understand this from the voices of individuals that have been navigating this for years and love this country and love it so much that they're willing to fight when they think it can be better. And so with that, I want to introduce Fatima, who is going to share more about herself, her story, and why this is so important to her.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be part of this important conversation. Thank you to Sergio, to Rose, Cesar, Eric, the Immigrant Legal Center, and Senator Tony Vargas for being in solidarity with the DACA community. So I want to highlight on two things. The first being what last Thursday meant to me, and I'm sure thousands of DACA recipients around the country. The first thought that came to mind is I get to stay. I get to continue working. I can breathe a sigh of relief when I get to drive, because it means that I can continue to maintain my driver's license. It means that the home that I've created for myself and my family doesn't have to go away. And really, it means that I get to stay in the place that I call home. The second thought that came is one that I know all too well, and that's that this is temporary. For over 20 years, I've been living in the state of Nebraska, the state that I call home. And in that time, I've gotten to understand what organizing means, what my story means, what my voice means, and ultimately how we can create the change that is necessary, not only for the DACA community, but for immigrants, for people of color, for women, for African Americans. The third thought was that I am tired of continuing to live in limbo. I have renewed my DACA status 3 times. That is over 6 years. And what that means is that I have consistently shown that I am a good person for this country. I do not have any significant misdemeanors or charges against me. I pay $500 every single year and a half to ensure that I can get my permit renewed. And on top of that, I still don't know if I'm going to be able to live through an administration that is ultimately trying to squash us out. So the reason that I want to work collectively with everyone on this chat, with everyone in the Zoom call, is because the system is no longer working for us. This system was not created for us. And we need to take our power and collectively use it to change what is happening, not only for us, but also with the Black Lives Matter movement. There is so much civil unrest, and that goes to show that this problem is not just impacting one race or another. It's impacting all of us, and it is incumbent on all of us to work to ensure that the people we elect from candidates at the state, local, and federal level are representative of us. Corruption in politics, super PACs, all of these different entities are having a stronger voice in our economies, in our countries, and it's not working for us any longer. So my call to action, on top of what every person on this call has been saying, is to continue to support the DREAM Act, the Dream and Promise Act of 2019, to make sure that it passes through the Senate. Last year, when I heard that the Dream and Promise Act passed through the House, I was incredibly elated, but I knew that it would go to die in the Senate because there is not enough political will to make that happen. And that comes back on our state delegation. The second call to action that I have is to look onto yourself. One of the first things that people told me when I came back from DC last year, thanks to the ACLU of Nebraska, I was able to go into the proceedings and listen to what was happening with DACA. I was able to stand outside of the Supreme Court as powerful men and women shouted, "Home is here," is that we need you, the voters and our allies, to really show up in November. Like, if this was up to us as DACA recipients and dreamers, if this was up to us as immigrants, we would have gotten this thing done years ago because we don't want to live in limbo anymore. But it's on you now to really make this happen for us because we can't wait any longer. This system is killing us. And for people like me, it feels like it's only a matter of time until they're going to get me. And the only thing that I want to continue doing is living in the States and making sure that our policies are more equitable and just, not only for me, but for every single Nebraskan in the state and also across the country. So I thank every single person that has been a part of this call. I encourage you to visit dreamandpromiseact.org, where you can find out more information about the Dream and Promise Act of 2019, to go to United We Dream as well, and to, of course, always continue fighting for what you know is right, because at the end of the day, the lines are being drawn and we're paying attention to where people are standing. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. And thank you to the rest of the presenters on this call. And thank you to everyone who's joined us online. The path forward on this should be clear, not muddied. An overwhelming majority of Americans support a permanent pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients. And it's time for the votes of our elected officials to represent the American people. And so please, I just echo everyone on this call, take action, call your elected officials. It only takes a few minutes. But with that, I want to thank everyone. We will post recordings and resources on the event page. Anyone that's interested in getting involved or taking action, also feel free to reach out to any of the agencies or individuals on this call. We're all here to help and to help organize people's energy and passion for this subject matter. I also want to note to any existing DACA recipients, potential DACA recipients, or anybody that just has immigration issues in general, that they can contact the Nebraska Immigration Legal Assistance Hotline for help. You can reach that hotline at 1-855-307-6730. The number's up on the screen now, and there will be a receptionist there to take your call and guide you through the process. So again, I want to thank everyone. It was a pleasure being on this call with all these wonderful presenters, and we look forward to working with you in the future.